Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Building a Tiny Boat series. And in the last episode, we took a walk down memory lane and I showed you guys what this boat looked like before we started its final rebuild. We started off with the transom, we talked about the cooler that we're going to be putting into the bow plate, and then we showed you how we changed these circular gunnels over to a rectangular shape for a better look. And in this episode, we're going to be talking about the subfloor. We're going to be talking about the foam that we're using underneath it, the material we're going to be using, and how we're already pre-planning our live well in this boat. Now, as you can see here, I'm taking a hole saw to the ribs in the boat. I'm doing this to make holes and pass-throughs each one of these ribs so that I can feed the Fireant premium hose, which is 3/4 inch diameter, through these ribs so we can steal that space for the drain inside the live well. The Fireant through-hole fitting has a 3/4 inch through-hole fitting that needs to connect to this 3/4 inch hose, and that is about 2 inches below the live well tank. So we're going to steal that space from underneath the subfloor to give us more room above the subfloor for the things that we need to have access to. So you can see I ran this hose all the way back to where I plan on having the pump and all the way up to where I plan to have the actual tank itself sitting. But let's talk about the foam. This is a closed cell insulation board foam from Home Depot. Now you're gonna have to measure the height of your ribs in your boat. For me, they're a little bit less than 2 inches, but I went ahead with the 2-inch foam, knowing that that rivet is going to pull the sheeting down. So my aluminum sheeting is actually going to be supported by this foam board. Now there are some pros and cons to this foam board. The pros are that it will not hold water because it is closed cell. It does add support to the subfloor sheeting like we just discussed, and it's also going to last for a long time. The cons are it's kind of expensive. I think this sheet was about $70, and if you're running a gas outboard, gasoline will dissolve this pink foam board faster than you can say oops. So just keep that in mind and make sure that you're getting the right stuff that you need for your boat and your application. There were still some stainless steel screws in the ribs from when this boat was originally built, so I made sure to sand all those down, cut off some of that bow plate structure that was stock to the boat that I didn't need anymore, and then kind of went around the interior of the hole and cleaned everything up to get all the shavings out and everything before laying and cutting this pink foam board into the different ribbed areas. After that, it was time to cut all the pieces down. I knew that my floor wasn't going to lay flat because my ribs are slightly V'd, like the low point in the middle, and then they kind of raise up to the sides. So I went ahead and made sure to make that cut in the middle of them, knowing that's the way the sheeting was going to sit. Now in the back, I just cut the foam out around where that 3/4 inch hose was running in between the ribs, but the final product should look something like this. And as you can see, my foam does stick up slightly above the height of my ribs. So now we're going to talk about the subfloor sheeting. This is 090 aluminum sheeting, and I'm making a very slight cut down the center of this so that it will bend out with that V. And then I'm taking an inch off the left and the right hand side because on the interior of my 1648 boat, the floor is only 46 inches wide. So this is 1 inch on one side. You can see that slight cut that I made, that relief cut, I guess you could call it. And then I use these pliers to bend the sides up. This is going to create tabs and allow the majority of that subfloor sheeting to actually lay on the ribs as much as possible. So this is also going to eventually be a mounting point for the sidewalls that are going to go into the boat. So we're going to be able to put rivets into this if need be. I've never done this before. This is my first time trying to install the subfloor this way, but I really like the way that it came out, and I don't know if I could have done it any better way. I really honestly believe that this is the best way to do it. So we ended up getting that 090 sheeting in, and as you can see, the flared ends are kind of running up onto the side ribs in the boat. And once I finally get this in place, I kind of walk on it a little bit just to make sure that, you know, I'm trying to compress that relief cut that I made in the middle down to the lowest part in that V, so that everything kind of sits flat flush into this subfloor. After that, I took a straight edge and made a line across the entire subfloor, so I knew where to run my rivets. Now, as I'm riveting this sheeting down to the ribs, I'm starting in the center and working my way out. That way, the more play that's in the center is kind of structurally sound first, and you can see that I'm kind of putting my weight around the areas that I'm putting the rivets in, so I make sure I get a really tight squeeze with that rivet. We did a quick little cleanup to get all those shavings out of there, and then now we're just kind of mocking things up. This was real early in the build. We were just kind of trying to get a feel for where everything needed to be placed and how the framing was going to run and what room we were actually going to have up there, because we've never put a cooler in the bow plate of a boat before. So figuring out all those different angles was something that we needed to do a little bit early. Right here we are running and installing some more framing material as conduit. I know that I'm going to have to run wiring from the front of the boat to the back of the boat, and from the back of the boat to the front of the boat. So the easiest way to do that was running this channel down the side of the ribs and welding it into place. That way I don't have any catwalks in this boat, so I didn't want random wires to be running in interior of the boat, I guess you could say. So all that stuff ends up being hidden, and it actually came out really good. I'm sure it added a little bit of support to the side of the boat as well, but that was just a plus in the whole thing. So at the end of the day, this is what it looked like, and now it was time to do the sidewalls. So I took some more 090 aluminum sheeting, which I probably could have gotten away with some 060 or 050, but I wanted to use the 090. And then it was time to drop it into the boat and make sure everything fit, which thankfully it did. And then I made my marks for my rivet lines. I came back through again with the pliers and kind of tweaked out that little lip that we did, that 1-inch lip on the subfloor, a little bit more. That way we could attach the rivets. So in this shot, you can see the rivets at the bottom. Those are into that 1-inch piece that's actually in the subfloor. And then we have a few rivets into the ribs on the side of the boat, and then at the very top. It didn't take a whole lot to put in there, but I wanted to make sure that that was all secure and in place. So after this, we can get started with the fun stuff, which is going to be the next video, where we start talking about the framing and how we kind of started framing this entire boat out and planning for everything. But if you guys have any subfloor questions, please leave them down in the comment section. I'll make sure to get back to them. And feel free to subscribe to the channel, because we're just getting started with this build.